Hi, I'm Ron Hirschman, and this is episode number 36 of Between the Lanes. Another solo show. You just got me tonight. Ralph's busy revamping the studio down there in Georgia, and hopefully he'll be back next week. And, let's just get to it and do the old race results. And quite a bit of racing last weekend in Buena Park Raceway out in California. They ran the SCRRA, ran the retro cars on the flat track there. And on that track, the F1 race and the Can-Am race, both was won by Dale Yamashita. Second was Brian Warmack, and Mil Conroy was third in both races. So same podium for both classes. USCA was at Pro Slot Raceway in Hartford, Michigan. And in the 4.5-inch class, local racer Mike Meacham was the winner. Bill Sabenik was second, and Scott Morgan was third. In the IndyCar race, Bill Sabenik was the winner with Scott second and Dennis Clark third. And in both Can-Am and production, same podium. Dennis Clark was the winner of both. Scott was second, and Mike Meacham was third in both. The Mid-South Series was at Concord Raceway, home of the 2019 USRA Scale Mats. And 4-inch class, Walker McNulty was the winner. Carl Burrow was second. Guy Spalding was third. GTP, Trey Foster was the winner. Walker was second. And Timmy Bottoms was third. In the 4.5-inch class, Walker won again. And Guy Spalding was second with David Connor third. And the Dirt Late Model class, Walker wins again with Timmy Bottoms second and Trey Foster in third. Florida, don't pay attention to that. The Florida Slot Car Series was in Melbourne, Florida this past weekend at the Raceway.biz. In the 4-inch stock car class, Group 1, Dale King was the winner. Marcus Ramos was second. Terry Tawney third. In Group 2, Ralph Josie was the winner. Tracy Dickinson second. And Lewis Satterley was third. LMP Group 1, Doc was the winner with Marcus second and Ken Green in third. Group 2 LMP, Lewis was the winner, Ralph was second, and Tracy was third. GTP Group 1, Marcus Ramos was the winner with Doc Doherty second, Dale King third. And in Group 2, we had Tracy Dickinson winning with Lewis Satterley second and Ralph Josie third. I thought it was kind of cool how Tracy, Lewis, and Ralph kind of mixed up the three podiums amongst themselves and the three different classes. Down in Cordell Speedway, Marietta, Georgia, they had a retro race this past weekend, had a lot of visitors outside their normal racing program. And in the Can-Am class, Taylor Davis was the winner. Will Brinkley was second. James Merriman was third. In the stock car class, Will Brinkley was the winner with, I think this might be the wrong picture for the stock car class. But in this picture, we got, you know what, this was actually the Can-Am. Let's go back to this picture. Nope, that was Can-Am. This picture was for the coupe class. Taylor was the winner, and James Johnson was second. Jeff Bonanno was third, and Will Brinkley on the picture was TQ. And in the F1 class, we had Jeff Bonanno winning, Chris Barnes second, Don Bonanno third. And then in the stock car class, it was Will Brinkley first, Tommy Flife second, Jeff Bonanno third. I don't have the photo for that. While we're on the subject of retro racing, there was a retro East race at Port Jeff Raceway in New York. And in the GTC class, Jimmy Williams was your winner. Brian Cochran was second. Ed Soul was third. In F1, Jerry Herbert Jr. was your winner. Dominic Luongo second, and Jimmy Williams was third. The FNRS series was at Mark's Model World in Canton, Ohio. And in the LMP class, Ron Hirschman, that's me, was the winner. Eric Shirey was second, and Bobby B was third. In the stock car class, I was the winner again. Terry Watson was second. In the A main, Bud Denning, we'll give him honorable mention. Bud Denning was third, but overall it was Willie Custer in third. In the GTP, Ron Hirschman won again with Bobby B second, and Jason Dennis was third overall from the B main. But in the A main, Jim Harder was third, but Jason ran a few more laps in the B to finish third overall. Also at Mark's Model World on Sunday, following the FNRS race, they had the Group F World Championship race. This is about the 5th year they've had that race, I believe. And at the end of the day, there was 18 entries, and Eric Shirey was your winner. I was second, and Bud Denning was third. So that's your winner chicken dinner report. And Sunday. This Sunday we've got races, Formula 2000. We've got the North versus South. We've got the Rocky Mountain Retro Association, the Super Stock 1000 hard body race, along with the Midwest FNRS races, both at Mid-America Naperville. Ohio Challenge Cup is racing this weekend, and the American Womp Racing Association has 2 events, one in Virginia and one in Las Vegas. And in other news, last Sunday, the driver sign-ups or registration started for the Flexipalooza race, June 1st and 2nd, to be held at Downriver Speedway in Lincoln Park, Michigan, which is an area of Detroit. And as of now, there's 40-plus entries signed up and paid for the race. And entries are still open, and you can go to the Flexipalooza 2018 Facebook page, as well as some of the slot car blog sites have links to that page as well, and you can still get in that race if you're interested, and all the detail is on that Facebook page. And the great big story in the last couple of days is the MTT track that was up in Canada was put up for sale on eBay early this week, and Randy McNulty, the host of the 2019 USRA Scale National Championship races, has acquired this track. He doesn't have it in his possession yet, but he's going to be heading north here in the next week or so to pick this track up. And this will be the track, the flat track that will be used at the 2019 USRA Scale Nationals to be held at Concord Raceway next April 2019. So for all those that were concerned that he didn't have a flat track or whatever, he will soon have this in his possession and will soon be up in the raceway. And I'm sure there'll be warm-up races starting sometime later this year in preparation for the 2019 USRA Scale Nats. And speaking of the USRA Division II Scale Nats, they start next week on April 24th, and they run through Sunday of next week at Slot Car Raceway in Rohnert Park, California. And, last week we talked about the history of USRA Division II scale classes. And the history, last week's history was prior to the USRA actually forming and starting the scale division as a separate division, having their separate nats, separate from their traditional wing car nats. So that starts next week, and we'll get into that here in a few. But before we do that, we got a couple of giveaways. Mid-America Products is giving away 2 10-pack pair of braids to 2 lucky winners. So dig in here and get your winner out for the first 10-pack, and that winner will be Matt Bruce. So Matt Bruce, you need to contact Roger at Mid-America Raceway Naperville, and he'll be more than happy to send you a pack, 10 pair of braid. And the second winner, he won't have to go very far, Michael Iga. He's a Chicago racer. He can go and probably pick them up from Roger. And we may see Mike this weekend at the races in Chicago. So that's all I got as far as the introduction to the show. And we're going to go into the history of Division II, USRA past Nats. And we're going to start off in 1996 was the first year that USRA had its separate scale division. It was called Division II at the time. It slowly evolved into the scale division. But 1996 was the first year that USRA had its own separate Nats or scale Nats. And the first race was held at JK Raceway up in the Chicago area. And this was the cover from the Slot Car Bulletin magazine at the time. And everything I'm going to share with you tonight basically was posted in, the past issues of Slot Car Bulletin magazine. So Paul Mayers, who was the publisher of Slot Car Bulletin magazine, basically was a big supporter of USRA and USRA Scale Division, and he covered these races pretty well. And so on we go. And at that race, like me and Ralph had talked a couple weeks ago, there was 75 Group 10 entries. The Group 10 class was broken down into three categories. You had Junior Group 10, which if I remember right, was for drivers or racers 13 or 14 and under. And then there was the Amateur Group 12, and then there was the Expert Group 12 class. And in that breakdown of those 75 Group 10 entries in 1996, there was 9 juniors, 44 in the Amateur Group 10, and 23 entries in the Expert Group 10. So in the Junior 10 class, Donnie Stewart was the winner, Michael Kelly was second, and Rich Knox was third. In the Group 10 amateur class, Dave Smirka was your winner, Jody Green was second, and Wayne DeHate was third. Expert Group 10, Jason DeHate was the winner, Bob Floca was second, and Paul Ciccarillo was third. In the 4.5-inch class, there was 47 entries. Ken Pepe pictured. He was your winner. Ron Arnold was second. Tom Ziemba was third. In the GT12 class, Paul Goronsky was the winner, with Tom Ziemba second and Bob Mack third. And in 132nd Eurosports, there was 20 entries. And Jason DeHate was the winner of that race. Tracy Chin was second, and Ernie Mazzetti was third. And in the 24th Eurosport class, Tracy Chin was the winner. That was his first ever USRA National Championship. Lee Gilbert was second, and Chuck Gambo was third. And this is a picture of Jason DeHate's winning 32nd Eurosport car. This is what we would call limo car. And the 96 Nats was the last year for the limo 132nd scale Eurosport cars. So Eurosport cars had won 94, 95, and 96. And 96, the final curtain call came for those cars, and the USRA basically went to ISRA specifications for the guide length and for the chassis. So in 1997, Fast Tracks in Rodeo, California, they were the host of the 1997 Division II Nationals. And I want to back up for a minute, because when we had the Division II Nats at Chicago in 1996, we raced on 3 different tracks. There was the LTD, the MTT, and the King track. So when we went to Rodeo, they raced some classes on the Kingelman, some classes on their MTT, which was, I want to say it was probably a Ogilvy-built MTT. I'm not 100% sure on that. But it was radically different from the MTT that was in Chicago. And they also had another flat track that they called the Road Runner. So at that race, I mean, this was the race that kind of put Paul Goronski on the map when he swept 5 of the classes that he entered. So in the junior Group 10 class, there was 14 entries, and Alan Oren was the winner, and James Rivera was second, and Josh Morstad was third. And in this picture, this picture is kind of cool because it was the 96 junior Group 10 national champion awarding the 97 junior Group 10 national champion, Donnie Stewart on the left and Alan Oren on the right. In the amateur Group 10 class, there was 40 entries. Gary Hooks was the winner. Bob Gage was second. Alan Oren was third. And in the pro or expert Group 10 class, Paul Goronski was the winner. John Toussaint was second, and Randy Marshall was third. And there was 20 entries. So there was a total of 74 Group 10 entries at this race. And it was an all-night affair, especially in the Group 10 classes, because we started racing early. I think it was Friday morning, and raced into early Saturday morning by the time the expert Group 10 race finished. And there's a picture of Gary Hooks, who also won the 4.5-inch class, which they had 26 entries. And Gary Hooks was the winner there. Tim King was second, and Herman James was third. And here's a few more pictures of some of the winners, the juniors and the Group 10 winners. In the GTP 12 class, Paul Goronski was the winner. George Russell was second. Philip Hellmuth was third. And there was 21 entries in that. And in the GTP class, there was 36 entries, and Paul Goronski was the winner. Troy Johnson was second, and Joe Peelan was third. And this is a picture, again, we raced all around the clock, and the sun came up in the morning, Saturday morning, and the sun came in so bad she couldn't see the track. So, it got so bad that, one of us called track, and we said, we can't see the track. I mean, everybody couldn't see because they'd been up all night, and then you got the sun beating in and the glare on the track. So we had track call, and they hung up a couple of banners in the window to block the sun, or to try and block the sun so we could finish the race. And we got it done, but I think we finished at like 7:30 or 8 in the morning after being there 24-plus hours. So in the 132nd Eurosport class, Paul Goronski was the winner. Tracy Chin was second, and Tomato was third. And in 124th Eurosport, Paul Goronski was the winner. Tracy Chin was second, and Michael Rocha, the late Michael Rocha, there on the left, was third. So that was your 1997 Division II Nationals. And again, there's Goronski with the famous broom picture, a clean sweep for him. And there I'm awarding Tracy Chin, I guess trying to do an impression of Tracy Chin for the camera. And George Russell, the raceway owner, there in the background. So in 1998, we went to fast tracks in Newark, Ohio. And this, in my opinion, was probably the largest Division II Nationals when you go back to basically having 6 classes at a scale nets, because after 98 we started adding a class here and a class there, and while you would get more entries overall in a lot of classes, you had less entries overall. And if you pay attention to these numbers that I'm telling you, you'll see that kind of decline over time. Excuse me. So at the Junior 10 in the Junior 10 race at the 98 Nationals, there was 11 entries. And this is a picture of the field, and you can see Jeff Bonanno here in the WFO shirt. We got Philip Hellmuth here down on his knee, and Ian Douglas, who was the tallest of all of them. It was hard to believe those guys were 13 or 14 years old compared to some of the other kids, but there was 11. And Jeff Bonanno was the winner, and Jackson Elijah was second, and Mitch Peelan right here was third. So here, this is 1, 2, and 3. And in the there's another picture of the young Jeff Bonanno. He'll probably kill me for posting this picture, but that was Jeff. I'm going to guess he was 12 or 13 at the time. So, but he was really into it. He was intense, and he had great concentration for a young racer. So, in the amateur Group 10 class, there was 65 entries, and Al Rudy was the winner, and Al Castillo was second, and Dave Smirka was third. And some things never changed, because here's Al Rudy with his headband and driving with his thumb, and you remember this is 20 years ago. So, and Al still races and still races with the thumb and the headband on certain days. So, doesn't look much difference. He's a little more grayer, but Al's Al. So, and this was Dave Smirka. You know, he won the amateur Group 10 race in '96 in Chicago, and he came out of retirement and he got third. And it would kind of turn the tables, because in '96 Dave finished. He won. He finished ahead of Al, and this was Dave's comeback, and Al beat Dave on the comeback. So, anyway, in the pro Group 10 class, there was 26 entries, and Ken Pepe was the winner. Tomato was second. Paul Ciccarello was third. And Tomato was another really good racer that used to race with us, and he won quite a few big scale races in his time. And he was out of the Chicago area. He was really good on the MTT track. He's really good on a flat track. And so also at this race, there was 28 4.5-inch amateur 4.5-inch cars. And Tom Falsnick on the screen right now was the winner. He raced out of Lucky Bob's in Wisconsin. John Spalding was second, and Mike Krebs was third. Tomato, which was the previous picture, he won the 4.5-inch expert class for the 4.5-inch stock cars. There was 14 entries. That was the last class of the weekend, and we finished at like 6:30 a.m. Monday morning after racing around the clock on Sunday. So in the 4.5-inch expert class, Tomato again was the winner, and Josh McGuire was second, and Paul Ciccarello was third. In the GTP class, on the amateur side, there was 39 entries. Al Castillo was the winner. Ian Douglas Pitchford was second. Mike Krebs was third. In the Pro GTP class, there was 20 entries, and Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Josh McGuire second. Paul Goronsky third. And there's the picture of the two Eurosport winning cars. Paul Goronsky's 132nd scale car, and Paul Ciccarello's 124th Eurosport car. So in the GT12 class, there was 20 entries. Ian Douglas was the winner. Tomato was second. James Cleve was third. Euro 32nd, there was 14 entries. Paul Goronsky won. Tim King second. Tracy Chin third. And in the Euro 24th race, I don't remember how many racers there were. I think it was 24. Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Paul Goronsky was second. They were a lap apart. It was a very exciting, good race. Tomato was third. And going back to the GT12 race, the last heat starts. Tomato's leading Ian almost by a lap. And the power came on, and they started racing. And eventually, Ian caught and passed Tomato for the lead. So Ian led the race until the end of the race, and the power went off. And everyone knew that Ian had won, except the lap counter showed that Ian and Tomato were on the same lap, which, if you looked at the track, Tomato was ahead on the track, and Ian would have been behind him. But everyone knew that Ian was leading, never fell off. But when the power went off, Ian crossed the lap counter, and that's when we discovered that SRT at that time did not count anything that coasted across the counter at the end of the race. So Tomato thought he won. He argued he won, even though everybody in the room said, no, you didn't win. But they went into the history of the of the race and proved to Tomato that no, Ian won and his lap didn't count when the power went off. So in 1998, I should say prior to 1998, at the 1997 USRA rules meeting, it was voted to change the month of the Wing Car Nationals to April versus the traditional August-September dates, and host them in April along with the Scale Nats, which was hosted in April at that time. So I don't remember how it worked out, but I gotta turn my paper. Flash Tracks in Boise, Idaho, won the bid for both races. So we were back to having both races, not the same week. The scale race was kind of the weekend before the wing cars started, but it turned into be an all-week affair. And so we went there in April, and they had, like I said, early in the week they had the scale Nats, and then it transformed into the wing car Nats. And it wasn't a very well-attended race on the scale side. Not enough people from the Midwest or East Coast traveled there. There wasn't much of a local program there at the time, and so it wasn't huge in number of turnouts. But they had the King track down below here, and they had the MTT track in this above picture. Not 100% sure, but I think this might have been the MTT track that George Russell owned, and Fast Tracks had acquired it and moved it north and hosted the Nats on that track. And if I'm wrong, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the same track that had been used for two Nats. So in the Group 10 classes, which then they called it, sometimes they called it NASCAR, sometimes they called it Group 10. But this picture here is the amateur 4.5-inch class, and I'll get to that in a minute. But in the Group 10 classes, there was a total of 38 entries, which was down considerable from the year before. Again, being way far northwest of the country kind of had an effect on that. But there was four junior Group 10 entries. Phil Pelmuth was the winner. Brandy Treblecock was third, and Mitch Peelan was third. And then they had 20 for the amateur Group 10 class, which RC was your winner. John Martin was second, and Todd Radke was third. And in the expert Group 10 class, there was 14 entries with Tim King winning, Paul Goronsky second, and Josh McGuire was third. And there's the junior 10 podium. And in the amateur 4.5, which was the photo before, Duran Trujillo was the winner, and there was 15 in that class. RC was second. Phil Pelmuth was third. In the expert 4.5-inch stock car class, there was 11 entries with Paul Ciccarello the winner, Ian Douglas second, John Toussaint third. In the expert GTP class, there was 14 entries. Josh McGuire was your winner. Paul Ciccarello was second. Paul Goronsky was third. 21 amateur GTP with Duran Trujillo winning again. Mitch Peelan second, and Jerry Treblecock was third. And this photo shows Buford at the start of the week. They played the national anthem, and Buford actually sang the national anthem for us. And Buford did a tremendous job, a good job, and it was a job well done. It was thinking back about it, it was kind of, I don't know what the word would be for it, but it was kind of unique, yet it was kind of funny that Buford sang the song, and he was so serious and he was so into it, and it was so good. But it was a different side of Buford that we really never seen before. So thanks for that, Buf, for singing that way back when, and hey, maybe they can get you to sing it this year. So in the GT12 class, Paul Goronsky was the winner. Ian Douglas was second. Tracy Chin was third. And 32nd Euro Sport, and there were 16 in the GT12 class. 32nd Euro, there was 11 entries. Paul Goronsky was your winner. Ted Essie was second, and the late Michael Rocha was third. And the This is a picture of Paul Ciccarello getting his trophy for the 4.5-inch expert class. And pictures of the cars back then. I mean, the Group 10 amateur class down here at the bottom, there's an old champion Turbo Flex, and above is the 4.5-inch Flexi 3 that Ciccarello won the 4.5-inch expert race with. And then here's a photo of the expert Group 10 podium, expert GTP, and this is a pretty good shot of the GT12 race. And poor Michael Rocha, he was stuck in the fast one sandwich there between Paul and Tracy and Ian and the late Jay Kisling. So that was kind of an interesting shot. And there's Michael Rocha and Herman James. Both were in the 32nd Euro main, and I don't remember where Herman finished, but again, Rocha was on the podium in the 3rd spot. And 24th Eurosport race, there was 21 entries. Paul Goronsky won again. He swept all the races on the MTT. Buford was 2nd, and Ciccarello was 3rd. So maybe some of you know this, maybe some of you know, but Buf's name is Paul Pedersen. And so in the Eurosport 24th race, we had the 3 Pauls on the podium, with Paul Goronsky winning, Paul Pedersen 2nd, and Paul Ciccarello 3rd. And also covering the race was Paul Mayers from Slot Car Bulletin and Paul Cassins from the Old Weird Herald. So we had 5 Pauls in the room. So just an interesting tidbit from the 1999 Division II USRA Nats. And there's a photo of Paul Goronsky's winning GT12 car. And in all the years prior to this, GT12 cars were made from brass and wire. And this was the first year that a all spring steel chassis ran in the class and dominated. And basically going forward from this point, and we'll see this in the next year or two, the steel cars basically phased out the brass and wire cars. A few people didn't think that would ever happen, but it happened. So in 2000, the Division II USRA Nationals was held at Buena Park Raceway. And they had the King track and they had the hill climb track. And in the Junior 10 class, they had 8 entries. In Amateur 10, they had 28. In Pro 10, they had 17 entries. And the Junior 10 class was won by Mitch Peelan. Steve Bishop was 2nd, and Alex Froon was 3rd. In the Amateur 10 class, Al Montoro won with Michael Kelly 2nd, and Chuck Gurney was 3rd. In the Pro Group 10 class, we had 17 entries. Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Alan Oren was 2nd, and Ben McGuire was 3rd. And there's a photo of the Junior 10 races, Junior 10 racers. And here in the center, the tallest one is your winner, Mitch Peelan, out of Las Vegas. And this is Alex over here. And Alex still races today at Buena Park Raceway, mainly retro cars these days. But his dad would bring him and his sister to the races, and Alex was another good little racer that kept doing it. And we have another one. So also at this race, Felipe de L'Espinay, otherwise known as PDL, he raced some classes, and he didn't do too bad. But there's Felipe racing with us. So, and there's Joe and Mitch Peelan again from Las Vegas. And it was father and son, and they went to several scale nationals before they kind of disappeared from the scene a couple of years later. And there's Jeff Bonanno getting a little taller, a little older, and he's racing with Gil Rivera. And they were both in the thick of the mix in the amateur classes that week. So in the amateur 4.5-inch class, there was 16 entries, and Gil Rivera was your winner. Al Montaro, the late Al, was second, and Ira Stoker was third. In the expert 4.5, there was 9 entries with Duran Trujillo winning, Tim King second, Alan Oren third. In the GT1, and this was the first year that we ran GT1, which is now known as LMP. So at the 99 Boise Nats, it was voted to add GT1 as a class to the Scale Nationals. So this was the first year. And in GT1 Amateur, Jeff Bonanno was your winner, and Big Al Montaro was second, and Scott Stromwall was third. In GT1 Expert, there was 14 entries. Tim King was the winner, Paul Ciccarello was second, and Joe Peelan was third. And in the GTP Amateur class, there was 20 entries with Michael Kelly finally winning his first USRA National Championship. Big Al was second. Jeff Bonanno was third. And Expert GTP, there was 16 entries. Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Tim King was second, and Paul Goronski was third. And this picture is from the GT12 race. And the GT12 race, along with the 2 Eurosport races, was held on the hill climb. And all 3 of those races were pretty bloody at times. And this was the last couple of minutes of the GT12 race, and RC's yelling at something going on, and the next minute he's all calm and racing again. So, and then in this picture you've got Duran and Phillip, and I guess I'm coaching them because the caption says some of the big kids even had coaches looking over the shoulders. So I was there, and I guess coaching those guys, which I used to do a lot of that stuff. But in the GT12 class, amateur was won by Gil Rivera. Second was Jason Holmes, who's still racing today. Bob Scott, the track builder, was third. In the GT12 Expert, Alan Oren was the winner. Duran Trujillo was second, and RC was third after a lot of screaming and yelling in the last heat. But here above in this picture is the RPM, steel GT12 chassis, which was the new Revolution the year prior. And the bottom picture is the winning car of Alan Oren, and you can see how the cars are starting to change just within the first year of the steel GT12 chassis. So in the 132nd Euro class, there was only 7 entries. Again, raced on the hill climb. Greg Gilbert was the winner. Duran was second, and Philip Hellmuth was third. And there was 12 124th Eurosport cars. I'm going to back up again here. And Paul Ciccarello was the winner, with Greg Gilbert second, and RC was third in that race as well. So from California, we moved to back to McHenry, Illinois, JK Raceway. Or it might have been Race World by then. I don't remember what name it was. And this was kind of another unique year where same location, same tracks. They had a Scorpion track, they had a hill climb track, they had an oval track, and they had the LTD. And it was a different location from the 1996 Division II Nats. And the USCA, which was another organization at the time, they ran their scale Nats a few days prior to the start of the USRA Division II Nats. So I'm not going to cover the USCA thing tonight, but they ran early in the week, and then later in the week became the USRA Division II Scale Nats. And a lot of guys raced both. Paul Goronski was for sure one that raced both. So at that race, in 2001, in the Group 10 class, there was 7 juniors. And I really don't have any numbers because there was really no numbers reported in the magazine. So I didn't dig deep enough to see if I could find them elsewhere. But I really have no numbers except there were 7 Group 10 junior cars. And Dustin Ishkowski was the winner of the Junior 10 race. Susie Mason was second. Nick Anderson was third. In the amateur Group 12, amateur Group 10 class, Blake Wankowski was the winner. Neil Eisler was second, and George Peterson was third. And I got photos of those guys, but I'll go back to this picture here. And here's Goronsky and Gilbert, Greg Gilbert, duking it out. Back in this time frame, those were like the two guys to beat in the Eurosport classes. Ciccarello was the third guy, but through this period, you always seen a lot of Paul and a lot of Greg battles, not only in USRA racing but out west racing and wherever there's a big scale race. These two guys were usually there, and they were usually running 1 and 2, and they put on a lot of good races, and they were always a good show to watch. So. Tracy Chin here. I actually have the body off his car hanging on the wall here. Yep, it's broken, Tracy. And Tracy just had a really rough day, and it's good to see he was laughing about it. But he made 3 or 4 attempts, and it was finally like, dude, get the car off the track. It's broke. So, and 132nd Eurosport. Obviously, this is before Tracy broke, I think. Lou Pirro, Roy Hood, Greg Gilbert, Gugu. Myself, I got talked into this race, and Paul Goronsky, and that was your 32nd Eurosport main at that race. So, amateur 4.5, Philip Pupillo was your winner. Dustin Ichkowski was second, and Ken Metzger was third. In the expert 4.5 inch, Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Josh McGuire was second, and Itch was third. And this is the amateur GT1 podium. Nick Cena was the winner. Eddie Beard was the winner, and Brett Mason was third. In the expert GT1, Tim King was your winner. Paul Ciccarello was second. John Toussaint was third. And that picture is Blake Wankowski. He was the winner of the amateur Group 10 race. In the amateur GTP class, Nick Cena was the winner. Neil Eisler second. Ken Swanson third. Expert GTP, it was RC was the winner. John Toussaint was second. Mitch Peelan was third. And GT12 Amateur, Jason Holmes was the winner with Brett Mason and John Hester. Brett Mason second, John Hester third. John Hester, a.k.a. John Wayne. Got a picture of him here in a minute. But this is Jason Holmes and Ken Swanson dueling it out. Don't know which race, but caption says they dueled it out in GTP and GT12. So there's Jason and Ken, and Jason's still racing, and Ken, he's not currently racing. Maybe he'll make a comeback, maybe he won't, but he was always a good time too. So, and there's your podiums from amateur GT12 and expert GT12. And in the 132nd Eurosport class, Paul Goronsky was the winner. Greg Gilbert was second. Gugu was third. I was fourth, if you're wondering. In 24th Eurosport, Paul Goronsky won again with Greg Gilbert second again, and Herman James was third. And there's John Hester, a.k.a. John Wayne, and he made a couple podiums. He made a podium in GT12, and he made a couple of, he was not known for scale racing at the time. He raced wing cars, and he came to Chicago and he did pretty good. And he has recently been racing down at Tracy Brown's Raceway down there in White House, Tennessee. And there's your amateur Group 10 podium at the bottom, and the expert Group 10 podium at the top. And Neil Eisler here, we talk about him in race results a lot. He's running hard body cars these days. Neil was a wing car racer, and then kind of for a while was an FCR car racer, and then he raced at disc scale Nats, and today he's racing the hard body car stuff. So there it is. Neil Eisler seems to like this scale racing. So there's Nick Cena. He took a couple wins that week up there in Chicago. Haven't seen Nick for years. Don't know what he's doing. Josh and Ben, they were the first father-son duo to finish first and second at the Nats at this race. And Josh went on to race real dirt, I don't want to say modifieds, but dirt cars, I guess late models. And Ben now is retired, and they both joined us down at the FNRS race last October down at Tri-State Raceway in Middletown, Ohio, and they raced. So haven't seen them since. Who knows if they'll come back for more? But they were always in the thick of the hunt back in this time period. So there's your amateur GTP and GT12 podiums, and there's your junior racers from that race. I don't know if that's all of them, but I guess it was because there was only 7, so that's all of them. And this is Dustin, the winner, and Susie here was second. And I don't know who Nick Anderson is. He was third. I think this was Nick, this guy right here. And it was always fun watching the junior racers race at the Nats. And some photos of cars. Again, champion Turbo Flex and Parma Flexi car, Flexi 1, and the RPM GT12 chassis, and I guess that won 3 years in a row at the Nats. And there's another Flexi 1, and there's a Scorpion 4.5-inch car that Philip used to win the 4.5-inch amateur race. And 2002, the Division II Nats was held at Electric City Raceway in Anderson, South Carolina. And they had an oval, a king, a paperclip, and a road course, and I cannot remember the name. I know at one time they called it the Purple Angel, and I don't know if they called it that when it was used at the 94 USRA Nats in Atlanta, or if they renamed it that when they moved it to Electric City. But at one time it was called the Purple Angel. And, they ran the Eurosports and the GT12 cars on it in South Carolina. But Paul Goronski, he had a good week. He won the 2 Eurosport classes, and we'll get more into that here in a little bit. But there was no junior Group 10 race at this race, and there was 28 amateur Group 10 cars. Eddie Beard was the winner, and Ken Swanson was second, and Chris Wilson was third. And this race, there was 8 in the main, of course, and 6 of the 8 got disqualified at the end of the race for air gap, I believe is what it was, motor air gap infractions. They were too small or too tight. I think the minimum air gap was 570 at the time, and 6 out of the top 8 motors were 569 or less. And I don't know really the exact finish of the race, but I know that Eddie Beard was the winner. Now, he could have finished 5th and got bumped up. I don't know. But Eddie Beard was declared the winner. Ken Swanson was second. Chris Wilson, who got third, was the first of the DQ racers. And everyone after him was DQ'd in that main. So they must have put him in. They must have put him in. The DQ order must have been the order they finished in on the track prior to the DQ, if that makes any sense. So in the expert Group 10 class, there was 22 entries. Alan Orn was the winner. Tim King was second. Paul Chickaro was third. And I was thinking that this was the race, but I don't think it was the race that never mind, we won't talk about that, because I was thinking this was the race. I think this was the first time that I should check the text sheets. I don't have it in front of me. I think this might have been the first race that the Red Fox D-cans were allowed to run. And in that Expert 10 race, the top 3 guys was running either Parma or Slotworks D-cans. In 4th place, I think, was Greg Gilbert, and he was running the Red Fox can. And that was kind of the big thing was the Asian D-cans versus the Brazilian-made Red Fox Sea Can, and the Chinese stuff won out at the end of the day. So in amateur 4.5, there was 11 entries. Eddie Beard was the winner. Tony Powell was second. Larry Holt was third. There was trying to figure out where I put the notes for the expert 4.5, but I guess I didn't write them down. So maybe we'll bump into that here in a minute. But in the amateur GT1 class, there was 32 entries. Gary Clinton Jr. was the winner. Chris Wilson was second. Eddie Beard was third. Expert GT1, there was 19. RC was the winner. Mitch Peelan was second. Paul Chickarello third. And this is Greg Gilbert, who was the winner of the Expert GT12 race, which had 23 entries. Greg was the winner. Alan Oren was second. Terry Kelly was third. And the amateur GTP class, there was 29 entries. Chris Wilson was your winner. Jeff Wilson was second. Eddie Beard was third. Paul Chickerell, again, he topped the Expert Group 10 class, which I read wrong. So that was the race. This was the first race okay, let's back up. So the Expert 4.5-inch race was won by Alan Oren, Tim King second, Paul Chickarello third. And then in the Expert Group 10 class, Paul Chickarello was the winner with the Chinese can, and Greg Gilbert was second with the Brazilian decan. So I do remember that. And this was the first year for what they call the C12 Euro class, and basically it was a Eurosport chassis with a C12 wing car motor in it. And Terry Kelly was the winner, with Mitch Peelan second and Jeff Wilson third. There was 13 entries. In the amateur GT12 class, there was 17 entries. Jeff Wilson was the winner. Bob Gonder second. Tony Powell third. Expert GT12, Alan Oren was your winner. Herman James was second. And Paul Goronsky was third. And this is the Wilson brothers, Chris and Jeff, and they both each won a national championship. They were local racers. They were pretty good racers. We never seen them after this race, but they did well through the week. They definitely was on top of their game. And Eddie Beard, of course, he was the winner in both amateur Group 10 and 4.5-inch amateur stock cars. And then, of course, Gary Clinton, he won the GT1 amateur class. Gary still races today. So, a lot of these guys you're seeing here was racing back then. And this is the amateur GT12 main. And this here's Ron Thomas. And, of course, we've got Jason Holmes again. These three guys, I'm not sure who they are. Ken Swanson, I believe, is right there. Tony Powell. And I think that was Jeff Wilson. So in the 132nd Euro class, there was 12 entries. And Paul Goronsky was the winner. And these are just some more podium pictures from the various mains that week. So Paul won the 132nd Eurosport class. And he had a hell of a race with Fred Hood throughout the race. And Tracy Chin was third. And they're all three right there in the picture. And the caption says, Paul Goronsky celebrates while Fred Hood checks his heart. And Fred almost pulled it off. And Paul wound up winning by 5 at the end of it. But Paul really had to push last couple of heats to get around old Fred. Because Fred was rolling pretty good in that race. And Tracy was quite a bit further back, but Paul pulled it off. And then in the 124th Eurosport class, there was 22 entries, and Paul Goronsky won again. Greg Gilbert was second, and Gugu was third. And here again, we got more guys that still race. Here's Paul Goronsky still racing. Herman James, Bob Foster, Gugu. That was Tim Weiland. I don't think he's racing. Roy Hood's still racing, and Michael Kelly shows up from time. We've seen him a year or so ago down at Tracy Brown's place. So, And there's your 32nd Eurosport finish. And Fred Hood, Paul Goronsky, Tracy Chin, Herman James, Joe Carr, who's going to race next week out in California. That's where he's from. Chris Barnes, Roy Hood, Greg Gilbert. And there's the 24th Eurosport guys. So we went from Anderson, South Carolina. And one before we go there, Paul Goronsky, because we talked about this on the show when Paul was on the show. I don't remember how it worked out, but he won some tickets to the Richard Petty, not Peggy, driving experience. And Paul said he didn't go, but he won some tickets to go do that at this race. And I don't remember the whole backstory on that, but they were put up. Maybe it was for who did the best on the flat track that week, but Paul won, but he didn't go. So we went from Anderson, South Carolina to Mineral Ridge, Ohio, and American Raceway. The owner was Dan Artman. He's no longer with us, but they had a King Oval and UK Black Track there, and I believe the UK Black Track came from Lou Piro, and that was the cover of the magazine from that race. And in the junior Group 10 class, there was 10 entries with Daniel Hudson, the winner, Colin Maida second, and Josh Batchelor was third. There was 37 amateur Group 10 cars. Mike Brissett was the winner, William Burnside second, and Mike Lear was third. In Expert 10, there was 16 entries. Paul Ciccarello was the winner, Danny Zona second, Alan Oren was third. 22 amateur 4.5-inch cars. Tony Powell was your winner for his, I believe that was his first national championship. Greg Wells was second, and William Burnside was third. 13 expert 4.5-inch stock cars. Alan Oren was the winner. Duran Trujillo was second. John Martin was third. 20 amateur GT12s. William Burnside was your winner. Casey Scott was second. Mike Brissett was third. And 18 expert GT12. Paul Ciccarello the winner. Paul Helmuth second. Paul Goronsky was third. So, yeah, you know, Alan Oren, Paul Ciccarello, William Burnside. You're starting to kind of see the changing of the guard from the 90s scale racers. Now we're getting into the 2000s, and you're starting to see a changing of the guard at the top of the field. So, you know, you had Michael Kelly and Duran and Danny Zona and Urkel, you know, well-known lean car racer. He was starting to come into the scale scene and doing pretty well. So, you know, like I said, again, you're starting to see the change in the guard. And here's kind of a change in the guard, Danny Zona and Jay Kisling. You got the new guy, and you got old school. And a lot of trash talking between these two the whole week. And there was a lot of pride and a lot of stuff on the line between these two guys. And I mean, they raced their guts out when they were on the track together, and I don't remember exactly what race this was, but Jay beat out Danny at the end, and there's the big hoopla, and Alan Oren was the race winner, and I think Jay might have been third, and Danny was fourth in this race, but there, you know, just there's Jay beating out Danny after so much trash talking all week. So anyway, yeah. I'm trying to think where I just stopped, but anyway, there was 12 of the C12 Eurosports with William Burnside the winner, Michael Kelly second, Jason Burnside was third. In GT1, there was 44 amateurs, and Al Rudy was the winner, and that was kind of controversial. Casey Scott was second, Mike Lear was third. 21 expert GT1s, Alan Oren was first. Duran Trujillo second, Jay Kisling third. And in this picture, that's Greg Wells. And, you know, it says Greg Wells came in close in 4.5, but had to settle for second. I remember Greg Greg led that race quite a bit, and I actually thought Greg had it in the bag, and I kind of walked away from the track and didn't watch the finish of the race, but somehow Tony Powell got around him, I think, in the final heat of the race and wound up winning, not by very much. And it was kind of a big letdown for Greg for sure. But because everybody in the building thought Greg was going to win, but I walked away, so I don't know what happened. But Greg got second, and we all thought he was going to win. So I was going to give him an honorable mention here for that. And there's Al Rudy again. Thumb, hair's a little shorter. Didn't have his headband on, but so in the GTP amateur class, there was 28 entries. Casey Scott was your winner. Axel Rose was second, and Jim Rapati was third. 17 expert GTP. Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Duran second. Urkel was third. And there's a picture of the two winning Eurosport cars, 132nd Philip Hellmuth and 124th was Paul Goronsky, which I was getting ready to tell you about that. 19 32nd Eurosport cars. Philip Hellmuth was the winner. Paul Ciccarello was second. Paul Goronsky was third. And in the 24th Euro class, there was 20 entries. Paul Goronsky was the winner. Paul Ciccarello second. Herman James was third. There's some podium, or those are actually shots of the drivers in the mains and the Expert GT12, and the two Eurosport races. And this is Philip Hellmuth, winner of 32nd scale. Paul Ciccarello, who was the winner of the GTP class, but not on the flat track. And then Paul Goronsky, Eurosport 124th winner. So I don't know which race this was. I don't know if this was 32nd or 24th, but there they are racing. There's the GT12 amateur podium. There's Casey Scott still racing today. William Burnside still kind of making a comeback. He's racing down Florida. And Mike Brissett, he's kind of off again, off again. So there you have it. There's the C12 Eurosport deal. William Burnside was winner. Michael was second. And, here's Lee Gilbert and Mike Stahl. Don't know who the gentleman is in the middle. I don't know if he was a racer or just kind of there hanging out. Kind of remember him as a racer, but I don't remember his name. But anyway, Lee Gilbert, as the caption says, was kept busy pitting cars in the hectic 124th Eurosport main. And I remember Lee had, I'm thinking 4 or 5 guys in the main running his stuff. And, somebody's gear went out and Lee's over there fixing it. By the time he's got it fixed, there's another guy standing in line waiting. And I think at one time they were 3 deep in the line waiting for Lee to fix their cars. So it was kind of a funny moment. Not funny for those guys, but it was just kind of funny that, the speed shop's open, but we're backed up out the door. So that's your 2003 report. So 2004, we went out to Raceway USA in Portland, Oregon. Paul Cassins was kind of the host of this race. He was the manager of the raceway. And they had a hill climb, a twister, and an oval track. And this is the photo from the cover of that race. James Lecanto, he won 3 amateur championships. Goronsky won the 124th national championship for the 4th straight year. Here we have again Duran. We have Colin Herzig, who was junior title in Junior Group 10 and Cobalt 12. Greg Gilbert, he had a lot of podiums that week, and he won in GT 12. And I got no numbers for entries on this race either as far as individual classes go. But in the amateur 10 class, Tyson Joyce was the winner. Colin Herzig was second, and Jimmy Ross was third. In the expert Group 10 class, Duran was the winner. Chris Radish was second, and Ron Hirschman, yours truly, was third. In the 4.5-inch amateur, class, James Locanto won, Jimmy Ross second, Alex Molly was third. 4.5-inch expert, Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Duran was second, and Chris C? Chris C was third. I don't know who Chris C is. And photo from the magazine, Thrill of Victory. This was me after winning the Expert GT1 class. I won that. Casey Scott was second. Jake Hisling was third. Amateur GT1 was won by Jimmy Ross. Colin Herzig was second, and James Locanto was third. And Roy Hood was there, and he won in the Expert GT12 class. And Greg Gilbert was second, and Paul Goronsky was third. In Amateur GTP, James Locanto was your winner. Colin Herzig was second, and Thomas Burnside was third. And we had some young racers there. Jonathan Forsyth, he'll probably kill me, but that's Jonathan. I think this was the first time Jonathan had run Eurosports at the scale Nats. He'd run some other classes, previous scale Nats, and I'm thinking this was the first time he ran in the Eurosport classes. And this is Alicia Gilbert, which was Lee Gilbert's daughter, and she ran the Eurosport classes as well, and she didn't do too bad. She did pretty good. I think she won one of the semis in one of the Eurosport classes and made the main. I'm thinking. In the Amateur GT12, James Locanto was your winner. Gary Johnson second. Thomas Burnside was third. Expert GT12, Greg Gilbert was the winner. And this is that podium. Paul Goronsky second, and Chris Radish was third. And GT12 Euro, Colin Herzig won. Kenny Richens, wing car racer, was second. John Emmons from Southern California was third. And 32nd Eurosport, I don't know why it says Expert 32nd because it's just Eurosport. Paul Goronsky was the winner. Greg Gilbert was second. Herman James was third. And in 24th Eurosport, Paul Goronsky was the winner in the center, with Mike Stahl second on the left and Greg Gilbert third. And this was kind of a controversial race, but we'll get to that in a minute. And this is a picture of the Twister track that was at Raceway USA. And of course, this track currently resides out at Jim Radford's Raceway, Pacific Slot Car Raceway in Washington. And there's been, I think, 3 national championships held on this track over time. Maybe 4, but 3 of off the top of my head. So on the left here, we've got the late Don Perko, who was a wing car racer, and he would come race Eurosports with us. And then Frank Sarkala there, this year's scale Nats host, which start next week. He was there racing Eurosports as well. So the controversy in this one was we had a problem counting laps, or the lap counter working in the 24th Eurosport main. And this photo is from probably about, 2 in the morning or so, 2 or 3 in the morning. And we had to revert to hand counting laps. And in this picture, I believe this is Howard, the owner of the raceway. This is Paul Cassins, and he's counting laps. Andy Wasserman was the race director. Not sure who this person is. This is me. I'm counting laps. Casey Scott's counting laps. This might be Don Perko back here counting laps, and I don't know who this was. And there's probably some other people counting laps outside the picture. But we all had pen and paper, and we did not count the same car all 8 heats. We were assigned a lane to count, and I don't know, we all counted laps, and sometimes our laps matched what was on the lap counter, and sometimes they didn't. And it was really difficult because it was hard to determine if it was certain cars not counting or certain lanes not counting. But it was just a mixed bag. There was some guys would count in some lanes and not other lanes, and some lanes would count every time, and it was a mess. But we had to do what we had to do, and the official scores did not take well to people looking over their shoulders or taking pictures while they did their job. And I'm pretty sure this is Roy Hood and Bill Vanderzeel here. He was I don't know if he counted laps or he was just one of the official tally guys at the end, and Andy there giving us the evil eye because he's getting his picture taken. Like we're gonna get the results off the camera there. So this is James Lecanto. He won like 3 or 4 amateur classes, and another guy we just never seen at any Nats after the 2004 Division II Nats. So some amateur podiums. You got Colin over here, and I believe that's Jimmy Ross, and that was Tyson Joyce. And again, we got 4.5 amateur. This was Jimmy. This is kind of a weird podium because it don't really match up to what I got wrote down. I think, though, this is correct. I think what happened in a 4.5-inch amateur class, Bill V was declared third place or second place, and because Jimmy was definitely the winner, or James was the winner, and Bill was second, and Jimmy was third, and Alex was fourth. And so, there again, you see the young kids, but these guys we never really seen after this race. I mean, some of them were for California, and some of them were local there to the Portland, Oregon area. So there's Mr. Burnside, and Mr. Burnside again, and there's Gary Johnson. And I think Gary Johnson's still racing. I know he was a couple years ago. He was still racing, was running retro cars out that way. So again, we're talking, over 20. That's 2004. So we're talking like 14 years ago. So John Emmons, he kind of retired from racing quite a few years ago from Southern California. And, I know, Jonathan, you'll kill me, but, this was in a magazine back in the day. But this was Jonathan racing in the Eurosport class, one of them. And as we all know, Jonathan sometimes has his tongue wagging while he's racing, and it's just part of his rhythm and his movement and motions. And I'm sure someone, maybe Steve Forsythe, can post how Jonathan was in this photo. But there he was back in his beginning days of slot racing with the big guys. And we all know now, Jonathan's a well-established and really good racer. So in 2005, we went to Keystone Raceway, Pennsylvania. They had the King Tri-Oval, and they had a UK black track. And again, more changing of the guard, as you can tell by the cover here. We got Joey SSS Salzman, and Trevor Rosenberg and Ron Van Wagenen and James Grinstead. And, Rosenberg sweeps. Trevor had a really good week in the amateur classes. Alan Oren and Herman James each won a couple classes. And Alan Warren, like I said, he had a couple wins. Trevor swept. Herman James, I think that's first year he won a Eurosport race. And Ciccarello was there, and he won his third national Eurosport 24th title. And there's Joe, and there's James. Young men then, older men now. Not as old as me, but they're older men. So anyway, at this race there was 8 junior Group 10 cars. Matt Ramirez was the winner. Zach Grinstead was second, and Jonathan Forsythe was third. So, Jonathan's like 13 or 14 at this time, or maybe younger. So, in the Group 10 amateur class, there was 27 entries. Trevor Rosenberg was your winner. Bobby Davis third was second, and Zach Grinstead was third. In the Group 10 expert class, 16 entries, Alan Oren was your winner. Al Montoro was second. Duran Trujillo third. 4.5-inch amateur, Terry Tawney was the winner. Stone was second. Alicia Mullins was third. Alicia. 17 4.5-inch expert, John Martin was your winner. And Paul Ciccarello second, with Alan Oren in third. So this is, I believe that's Zach Grinstead, and he is congratulating Terry Tawney. And Terry Tawney still races today. Zach not racing so much. Thomas Burnside again. Again, you know, those Burnside was a familiar face at all the Nats for quite a while in the late 90s and into the 2000s. And there's Duran and Allen, you know, on the track racing. So in GT1 Amateur, there was 25 entries. Trevor was the winner. Thomas Burnside second. Adam Shaw was third. 18 GT1 Expert. Duran was your winner. Big Al Montaro was second, and Alan Oren was third. And then in the GTP Amateur, Trevor won again. Zach Grinstead second. Terry Tawney was third. And GTP Expert, 23 entries. Alan Oren, your winner. Al Montoro second, and Duran third. So there's a picture of the late Big Al Montoro. Al was a pretty good racer. Got a little excited at times. Would get quite animated at times. He raced wing cars. He was from Port Jeff Raceway. Definitely a good time. Lots of fun. You get him and Kisling and Danny Zona together, and the crap really flows uphill on that one. So they could all talk some trash. There's John Martin, the 4.5-inch winner, being congratulated by Gary Clinton Jr. I don't know if Gary was second in this. No, Gary wasn't second in that race, but he was in that race, but he wasn't second. So, and there's Terry Tawney. He made 4 mains, and he won the 4.5-inch amateur class. And there's another Burnside, Lewis Burnside. I don't think I ever met Lewis, but raced with 3 or 4 of the other Burnside guys, or was at races they were at. And so we'll get into the Cobalt 12 Eurosport class. Joe Salzman was your winner. Thomas Burnside was second, and Ron Van Wagner was third. And I think that that wasn't the cover shot. But GT12 Amateur, there was 28 entries. James Grinstead was the winner. Lewis Burnside, who we just seen, was second, and Terry Tawney was third. In the GT12 Expert, there was 18 entries. Herman James was your winner. Joe Salzman was second, and Greg Gilbert was third. And there's Paul Ciccarello's winning 124th Eurosport, which that car had won the previous year in California, or not California, out in Oregon. And Paul Goronsky must have loaned it to Paul Ciccarello, and Paul Ciccarello won with it. And caption says, "Who gets it next year?" for 2006. So 132nd Eurosport was won by Herman James. Greg Gilbert was second. Paul Ciccarello third. And 132nd Eurosport, like we already said, Paul Ciccarello was the winner. Herman James was second, and Lou Pirro was third. So we've taken you now up to 2005. So next week we will run through the 2006 through 2017 USRA Scale Division 2 history and races. And like I said, we raced on a ton of different tracks. You've seen photos of how some of the cars have changed over time, changing the guard with the drivers. And, it's like a trip down memory lane for me, but there's a ton of history there. And, you see these guys at races, and if if you haven't raced very long, or you're not into the what I would call the national scene, or wasn't back then, a lot of people don't know how long some of these people have really been racing, and this over the last couple of weeks have shown that. So it's been interesting for me. I hope it's been interesting for you, and that's pretty much all I got for this week. So if you're going racing this weekend, be safe, be careful, and the two winners on the show, Michael Egan and Matt Bruce, get a hold of Roger at Mid-America for your winnings. And we will see you next week, Between the Lanes, episode 37. And here we go, secret word. Secret word this week is going to be MTT. So that's the secret word. Congratulations to Randy McNulty for getting that MTT track out of Canada and bringing it to the U.S. and giving the scale racers here in the U.S. another nice track to go race on. So until next week, be safe, and we'll see you next week.